Hi everyone, in this video we are going to learn about delegates in C#. So I've just created a new console application for myself by using .NET version 5.0 and I am using Visual Studio as my editor. And this is the default program class that we are provided with. And these are the few things that we will be covering in this video. So I'll put them here and I will also comment them out. Starting with the definition of delegates. Delegates in simple terms can be understood as a pointer to a function. The way an object points to an instance of some class, similarly the object of a delegate points to some function. And the main purpose of delegates is to pass functions as a parameter to different function. And why would we do that? Because we want to plug a piece of functionality dynamically inside the other function, and we'll see this in action. It will be more clear to you at that time. So we'll start with how to define delegates, and one thing to note is that delegates can appear inside class or directly inside namespace. So for this demo I'm going to stick with defining delegates inside a class, and the definition is very simple. It's very similar to how we define a function. The only difference is that it does not have a body, one, and second, that it contains a keyword delegate. So how we define a function? We write something like public and then the return type string and then the name of the function, and we're going to call it greeting delegate because it's a delegate, and then the parameter list if any. So we're going to take one parameter of type string and we're going to call it name. So we put semicolon here because we're not going to define any body, and the second thing that we talked about was delegate keyword, so we put it before the return type. So now our delegate definition is ready, and any function that has a return type of string and takes one input parameter which is also of type string can be substituted wherever an instance of this greeting delegate is required. And the source of that function can be anything. It can be an instance method of some other class, it can be a static method, or it can come from inside the same class as well. For now we are going to create a separate static class. Let's call it what would we call it? Greeting methods collection. Okay, and we're going to have several methods here: public static string, let's say morning, string name, and this is going to return a string, good morning, and the name and some exclamation signs. So the signature of this method, that is the return type being string and the input parameter of type string, matches with the signature of this delegate. That is why we can substitute this method wherever an object of this delegate is required. And one more important thing that I want to talk about here is that what we've learned in method overloading is that the return type is not considered when signatures of two methods are compared, but when it comes to delegate, return type is considered while checking the signature. So keep that in mind. We're going to create one more method. We will call it afternoon, and it is going to do exactly the same thing but afternoon. Now we are going to make another method inside the program class, and this method is going to be responsible for actually greeting the user. So we'll say something like public, we'll mark it void, and it will take two things: one, the user's name, the user which we want to greet to, and second, the way we want to greet to. Alright, so the second parameter is going to be of type greeting delegate, and let's just call it greeting method. Now it can have some logic of its own, and it can have some more logic. We're not concerned about that right now. The only thing that we are concerned about right now is invoking this delegate, and we invoke it like this by simply putting brackets after the parameter name and passing relevant parameters. So this function is ready. Now we need to make a call to this function to actually get it working, and we're going to do that in this main method. We'll get rid of this default console.log, console.writeLine actually, and we'll make a call to this greet user method here. So the first parameter is going to be the name, let's call it foo, and the second parameter is going to be our delegate type. Now we need to create an instance of our delegate, and the way we do it is greeting delegate, let's call it del1 is equal to, and now the method name, so the method is coming from this static class, so we'll write something like this. Now this delegate 1 is pointing to this method which is defined here, and then we can pass this method here. Why it's giving error? Okay, so we can mark it static. Cool. So now effectively we are passing one function to another function, or a different way to look at this is that we have a function which has certain functionality written inside it, but there is one piece of functionality which we want to be inserted dynamically into this function instead of hard coding it inside this function only, and that is where delegates come into picture. Whichever function that we are going to pass as the second parameter, the functionality from that function will be picked up and inserted here, right? So now if we run this method, we should see a console.log. Okay, we need to put it in console.writeLine. Okay, let's try this. We should see something like good morning, and the username that we're passing is foo, so we should see good morning foo. And yes, we see it. So this is how we define, instantiate and use delegates in our code. Now we'll have a look at the second method, that is afternoon, just to confirm the fact that any method can be passed in place of greeting delegate, provided that the signature of that method is matching with the signature of our delegate. We'll call it delegate2, and we'll pass delegate2 to greet user this time, and now we should see good afternoon foo. Indeed, we see good afternoon foo. Right, so let's have a look at the topics. This is done, this is done, done, definition, instantiation and usage also done. Yeah, just ignore this thing. And the next thing is how to use lambdas in place of delegates. So I am going to comment this invocation here. I'll make use of lambda now. So calling the greet user method with, let's name the user bar this time, and here instead of passing a function we can pass a delegate, we can pass a lambda and username. It should return a string, right? Okay, so if we now hover over this username, it automatically says that it's of type string, because greet user is expecting the second argument of type greeting delegate, and it accepts the first parameter as string. So here we can write something like evening, and username of course. So the parameter name does not have to match. So for example, here it was name and here it was name, but here we've put username. So the parameter name does not matter. The parameters type and the order and the total number of them, those should match, not names. So now we should see one console statement saying good evening bar. Let's verify it. Good evening bar. Yes, we see it. Now there is one more concept that we are going to cover in this video, that is multicasting. Multicasting is basically when one delegate instance can be used to invoke multiple functions whose signature match with the delegate definition, delegate signature. And the way we do it is, first we'll get rid of this greet user call as well, and we're going to create one new instance of our delegate, greeting delegate del3 is equal to, and we can use plus operator on delegate. So we can write something like del1 plus del2, and now while calling greet user we can pass del3. So in this case, okay, we also need to pass a name. Let's call it foobar. So now if we run it, we should see two console statements, one morning and one evening, and the order would be the same order in which we've added the delegates, delegate 1 and then delegate 2. That means first morning and then afternoon. But we're only seeing one statement. I don't know. Let's have a look at the code again. We've got two delegates, one pointing to morning and one to afternoon. We're adding them 1 plus 2, and we're passing delegate 3 to greet user. Let me try it one more time. That is strange. Okay, I think we'll have to take a deeper look at this. We've got this morning and this afternoon methods. We're returning appropriate messages. Okay, it could be because we've put this greet method call inside the console.writeLine, and it could be something like it logs only the result returned from the last invocation. So in this case it was afternoon because we added it in last. So we'll try something different. We'll get rid of this console.writeLine here, but we'll keep the call intact to this greeting method, and we'll log here. We'll log the same method that was being returned. Okay, and the same thing we're going to do in this method. Okay, so the only console logs are from these methods, and here we're only invoking the greeting method delegate, and we're not making any log. So let's see if it's working fine now. I hope it does. Yes, it does. So first morning and then afternoon. So that covers multicasting. So these were all the topics that we were planning to cover in this video. In coming few videos we'll talk about generic delegates, and then we'll also take it a step further and have a look at covariance and contravariance in delegates, and not just delegates, in interfaces as well and collections as well. I hope you learned something from this video. If you did, please like, share and subscribe. Thank you.